How are you? Oh, good. Scott's downstairs, but we have Chris. That's kind of the it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? That's right. Well, welcome. I apologize for my voice. I've been working outside getting prepped for this party, and allergies just kind of smacked me in the face over the last couple of days. So, we've been spending the last couple of weeks talking about jargon. Funny word. Jargon applies to every kind of group in life. Every group kind of develops a language, a shorthand, if you will. And the church is no different. We sort of have a shorthand when we're talking to each other. We can say something, we all know what each other mean. And a lot of that, if you think about it, we've really kind of picked up contextually more than we've actually sat down and defined some of these words. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to take some time to sit down and go through what some of the more technical definitions of words are, because as it would turn out, if you just present something orally for a long time, sometimes things change over time. And this can be seen with stories, fairy tales that have been passed down from time to time. If you listen to one culture tell the same fairy tale, different things got kept, different things got abandoned, right? So as we pass words down contextually without actually sitting down and looking at the true definition, we run the risk of some of the translation of that word being lost, or at least as far as we understand it. So I always like to go back to, and part of this comes from my just absolute love of language, right? So if you're not a fan of etymology like I am, some of this may not matter to you, right? And I understand that. Some of this is totally me. But some of it is, as I find out things that are interesting about words, it changes how I read the Bible. Because I suddenly start to see this word and go, wait a second, what does this actually mean as it's written? So today is going to be an interesting one because, well, let's get to today, and then we'll talk about why it's a little different and interesting. So as Christians, our goal is inclusivity. Our goal is getting people not just in the door, but in the family, right? And we talked a little bit about, the first week, we talked a little bit about how when we walked in the door, there was a feeling that hit us, that kept us here. There was a sense of belonging, a sense of home, a sense of community, a sense of, something. And in a lot of cases, it's a little undescribable. It's a little less cerebral and a little more heart, right? That's what keeps us here, right? And our goal is to share that, right? That feeling, and once people are in the door, lock them in with the embrace of the church, right? But sometimes, as we're talking to people and talking about, what do you, if someone says, what do you do? What does it mean to be a member of a church, right? And you say something like, well, it means, being a disciple of Christ. Totally over their head, right? What is a disciple? That doesn't mean anything to me, right? So until you're in the door, some of these words don't necessarily have a meaning. Even words, and we talked about as simple as things like brother, when you step outside this building, means something completely different, right? So how do we take our shorthand, our jargon, right, and not just make it something where we share the words, but we share that feeling that's behind them, that underlying sense of community and belonging, right? We talked about the fact that as a disciple, one of the things that is kind of implied in being a disciple is that you're not your own representative, right? You're not your own ambassador. You're an ambassador to someone else. So as part of that is setting yourself aside, right? The biblical follower sets aside their own desires for this divine will. We talked about the fact that this turning from a self-centered life is the only thing that's going to lead you to desire godly living. If you're still self-centered and you're still focused on your own goals, you have no time for these goals, right? Because these goals are totally different and in many cases in opposition. We also talked about the fact that being a disciple means you're always in progress. You're never complete, right? You're always a student ready to learn. You're always espousing God's teachings, never God, right? But it also means that you're never, hopefully you're never not progressing, right? Because the goal of a student is to constantly be learning, right? So there's a little bit of grace and a little bit of obligation that comes along with this, right? I don't have to worry about being perfect. That's not my goal. But I do want to constantly be striving for more and more understanding, more and more learning, more and more likeness to Christ. And that's going to lead us to that godly loving that we want to share, that sense of godly family that we want to share, the definition that we have of brother, of including people in that, accepting that familial burden of sharing in people's suffering and sharing in people's successes and celebrating with each other, to care for others and to train others as a family would, right? As a godly family does. So we're going to talk a little bit about that sense of kind of caring and training others. Because when you talk about the biblical sense of caring for others and training others, the word that tends to come up is minister. So, what does minister mean? And I started today by saying this is a little bit of an odd one.
Well, you can minister someone by if someone's sick, you're ministering to them. You're feeding them or maybe helping them to get to bathe.
Yeah.
That's a
To basically to apply care, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. No, but it's highly important. I'm going to write it on the board because it's highly important what you just said, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Somebody else.
I was just going to say, that's how I describe Mark, because I'm talking about him, to people in the neighborhood, because he used to the word reverend, he used to the word pastor. And when I describe Mark, I describe him as a minister,
Mm-hmm.
because he encompasses all those things.
Yep.
He's preaching the word of God, he's caring about people's souls, he also cares about their physical needs as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Yep. It is absolutely used to describe the official capacity, right? Yeah. Somebody else, yeah. Yep. I'm gonna put training, because I feel like teaching by example or teaching by words, either way, there's training involved, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Something that applies, hey, how's it going? Something that, what is a minister? Or what does minister mean, I should say? So you'll find that there are a lot more definitions for the word minister than some of these other words. You'll find that that is just true. Last week when we were talking about disciple, in order to get to the verb, what did we do? What verb did we use? Discipline, right? So when you're looking at the word minister, not only is it a noun, it's a verb. It's the same, right? The same word is a noun and a verb. When you're looking at the word minister, the other kind of interesting thing is if you look it up, there are about 10 nuanced definitions between the noun and the verb. Of the 10, 8 of them focus on that right there. Some sort of official government capacity, some sort of official religious capacity, some sort of official title as an ambassador or an assistant to the ambassador or something like that, right? 8 out of 10 focus on that right there, the different official capacities labeled minister. And none of those official capacities predate this. This established all of those titles. The word minister in the Bible established what those official titles do and how they behave. So when we're talking about what does the Bible mean with minister, those titles didn't exist. We can't go to those titles to tell us what's here. We have to go here to tell us what those titles are. So when you look up the word minister in the Bible, if you ever use a concordance or something, and you look up this word, it is 15 different words used throughout the Bible. And some of those are like in the same word family, you know, the different kind of little tags at the end, changing the Greek a little bit, but essentially some of them are the same word families, but there's still about 9 different, completely different words throughout the Bible that all get translated into minister. So you're going to wind up with a, what in the world does this mean? Because our English language, the word minister encapsulates a lot of these. So, and by comparison, if you look at the word brother, that's 5 words. 5 words throughout the Bible that mean brother. And I say this throughout throughout the Greek, okay? 5 words in the Greek that mean brother. 3 words that mean disciple, and all 3 of them belong to the same Greek word family, right? So really there is very narrow and easy to follow definitions for some of these words. But that is not the case with minister. Next week, we're going to talk about the word saint. There is literally 1 word ever used in the Bible for the word saint. 1. So that one's going to be easy. But this week, 15. Yes, Vivian.
And the newer versions of the Bible is changing usage of brother throughout. And now you see brother or sister.
That's right.
Because I'm hearing that the Greek for brother applies to both.
That's correct. Yes, that is correct. And it's in the same way that you have in in Genesis, you have the word for man meaning mankind, and you have the word for man meaning male, right? And so you have some of those, and so that's where, you know, you have the word brother. It has 2 technical, you know, kind of words that go there, but they're all sort of the same word family, right? And so when we're talking about minister, if we kind of take some of these words, because I think some of these words are really interesting, and I'm not going to butcher the Greek, so don't worry. but I'm going to take some of the definitions that come with them. All right, so some of the New Testament words used for minister, those same words are used for public servant, attendant, right? Like hand servant, yeah? Butler, if you will. Deacon is the same word used for minister. In terms of the verbs, give, to supply, and what I love is to bestow or present, almost as an award, and to heap lavishingly, right? Then there's also to work is used as to minister, right? And then there is one of the words that often gets used as to serve in this official capacity. And that same word also means to sacrifice. And which makes sense if you think about priests ministering. The primary function of a priest is to intercede with a sacrifice. Right? So when you look at the definitions of the word minister in the Greek, you're looking at to give or supply or provide for a need, right? You're looking at to sacrifice, to work. Or if you're looking at the noun, you're looking at servant, deacon, right? Or different types of servant, right? Hand servant, butler, kind of, or public servant, right? So, and then, you know, if you dive into like all the intricacies, that's a very simplified version of a lot of those words. If you dive into all the intricacies of that, what I love about most of these words is they imply a need. They imply that there was something there that caused you to do this. Something that led to you ministering. And that something that led you to ministering was not some benevolent feeling in your heart that you just stepped up and ministered. What led you to minister was a need. Right? And it might be a need, a physical need, right? A need for, like you said, a need for care, a sickness, or, like a wound, something. But it's also that spiritual need, right? That need for salvation, that need for a wound of the spirit, right? There's also implied a sacrifice, a labor. And then the other thing that is always implied is the intention to benefit at your own expense. Right? So it's that setting aside of self. Right? We talked about it. It shows up here, that setting aside of self. But boy, it shows up here. When you minister to someone, if it's about you, you're doing it wrong. Because all of these imply this sense of seeing a need and setting aside your daily routine, setting aside your will, and meeting that need. So what does that mean for us, right? What does that mean for us? Right, so that's a good definition and everything. but what does that mean for us? How do we get that definition across to someone? By our actions.
Like when I'm at church, I think of this as this is my home. When people walk through the door, I greet them at my house. I greet them here as though they were coming to my home.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So when we're in this building, we're not just members, right? We're the host. Yeah? Knowing that we're not the host, right? But we're the heavenly host, right? When someone comes in the door, we are the hands and feet of the host. If we don't greet them, who does? If we don't ask, what are your needs today? Who does? And we don't have to ask it that way. We don't have to, as soon as someone walks in the door, hi, what need do you have? Before you come in, I need to know how to serve you, right? But it's that greeting. It's that, come on in, welcome, how's it going? Tell me about yourself, right? If you get someone talking, if you get me talking, I will tell you the needs I have because I know them. I think about them all the time. I got them. They're on a Rolodex, right? I know what I need. I know what's going through my head, right? When someone says, how can I pray for you? I'm like, oh, let me count the ways, right? How often has someone said, hey, how can I pray for you? And you're like, okay, which prayer do I give them? I don't want, that one's too serious, that one's too, right? We all have this set of needs that we could think of at the drop of a hat. We all know a neighbor who's sick. Maybe not a next door neighbor, but a friend. We all know someone who's suffering. We all know someone who's struggling. We all know someone who we can intercede for, that we've been thinking, who's been weighing on our heart. And sometimes that someone is us. We've been struggling, and it's been weighing on our heart. But until someone says, how can I take care of you? We don't burden each other with it all the time, right? So when someone walks in the door, they're not going to walk in the door and go, hi, I'm here to visit because I have this very specific need I'd like you to pray for, right? They're going to walk in the door because they're saying, I'm testing this place out. I'm dipping a toe in the water. And our job is to find it, seek out that need, and see how we can care for it. And sometimes it is a need that is very simply, I need more information, right? I need to know about Christ, right? Sometimes it is very simply, let me explain to you what this is. Let me teach you for a moment. Sometimes it is very, right? It can be any kind of need. It can be anything.
I was wondering in regard to Kelsey's comment about ministering for the purpose of bringing someone to Christ. I was wondering if that's actually one of the definitions you hit there, because I've been in and out a little bit. And I mean, because it's obviously the reason that we often serve people is to introduce them to Christ. Is that in any of the meanings there?
Yeah, so yes, it is. At the beginning, I said when you take the word minister in the English dictionary and look it up, 8 out of the 10 titles are predated by the Bible, right? So when we look up the word minister in the Bible, there are a couple of them that, like deacon is also the same word used for minister. And so is like work in an official capacity, right? Work as a priest kind of thing. So those are definitely some of the words that are used for minister, is to kind of minister in an official capacity, right? Which, again, it is not the primary word used for minister in terms of like most frequent, But for us, for our purposes, one of the things that I think is interesting is whether or not we're in official capacity, we're ambassadors, right? So the official capacity, the title of minister, whether or not you have the weight of the title of minister, I feel like you should feel the weight of the title of minister. Not because, again, not because you have to be perfect at all times and you have to be blameless and flawless, and if someone were to, hold a magnifying glass up to you, you should pass the minister test. But because, frankly, because if you're not feeling the weight of it, when I'm not feeling the weight of that word, these things pass me by. Needs pass me by, and I don't take care of them. Things that I could do pass right by me when I'm not thinking of actively doing it. Yeah? So that's a great point, because, the Bible is, and I don't know the numbers on this, but, the word deacon is used like, dozens of times throughout the Bible. But very few times is it the official title deacon in our translation. Right? And the same is true of minister. The word minister is used tons throughout the Bible. But most of the time it's kind of either the act of ministering to someone in terms of reaching out and caring for them, or the act of serving someone. And very few times is it, he was ordained an official minister from that day. Right? It doesn't usually, that gravitas isn't usually translated with it. But if we don't feel that gravitas, if we don't have that, then we're not going to be ready. That moment's going to come and we're not going to be ready. And no big deal if you miss a moment. You miss a moment, right? Your batting average does not have to be 1,000. You can watch a strike and it's a strike and you missed it. But learn from it and be ready to swing next time. Yeah, Vivian. Yeah.
And it falls within the church for believers, and it falls outside the people that you come in contact with every day. It falls into your own household. I remember specifically once, years ago, when my husband was ill before he passed, and I had, taken care of him, and we had a quiet day at home, and then after, he got settled, I sat down and I scrolled up to the book, and then I think I had that book maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then suddenly he was calling me for something else. We were right here in the same room. And I said, I was tired, so I said, honey, okay, let's just rest right now. Let's let that wait. I'll take care of it later. And then suddenly I was convicted. And it just felt like something said, just lay down your book. And laying down your book is a part of laying down your life.
Yeah.
Because this is something that he needed in the moment. And I wanted to defer it because this was my time.
That's right.
But finally I put the book down. It might not have been in a nice way. But I did put the book down.
Yep.
And I got up and I ministered to him. So it's oftentimes it's just the little things, because we're pulled in a selfish way to do something. And we should lay that down and do something for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a neat example that Bill kind of taught me is, when you got, and I have to tell many people, when you got young kids at home,
Yeah. I like what you said, Vivian, and I love that example. That's great, because it is a lifestyle. It is a million little choices, and it doesn't cost you everything to let it cost you something, right? So it certainly doesn't hurt you. It blesses you, right? Doing stuff like that doesn't hurt you. It blesses you. It benefits you. And the cost, the calculated cost is, and I don't want to, I will get to that. I want to make sure that I point out the cost is a measured cost measured against something you see, right? It's seeing that need and paying what you need to do that need, right? When you start the self-martyred kind of like, oh, I give up everything, and a lot of times when you have that feeling of like, well, I give up everything, when do I get any time to myself, which parents feel a lot, spouses feel a lot. That's a common thing to feel. When you feel that, a lot of times, there is space for you. There is space for you, and sometimes maybe you need to ask for help. Sometimes maybe you need to, right? You need to take your space and let someone know that that is your need, right? And let them minister to you. So I don't want to take the pendulum too far in that direction, right? That there is definitely a need for sacrifice, but giving up everything is not what we're called to do. And when we give up what we need to give up in order to meet a specific need, right? Because that's what we're talking about. When we give up what we need to give up in order to meet a specific need, the blessings that flow out of that are immense. Yeah, Sean and then Sandy.
War is a terrible thing, and the Geneva Convention, one of the good things came from it is that in battle, you have people who are wounded, so then you have people with medical experience to serve the wounded. But they said, well, let's just in war, let's just not have those people who are serving be a part of the war. They're kind of separate. You can't carry a gun, but you can't shoot them either. They're just neutral because they're just helping people in the battlefield. Okay.
Right.
So Geneva Convention says that. So World War II, the U.S. GIs would put this big red cross on their helmet and have the little red cross arm patch so that they wouldn't be shot while they're helping people, on the battlefield. Well, the enemy was so terrible, they're just like, well, we're shooting these guys, but they're going back getting healed up and then coming back, so let's just shoot the medics. And next thing you know, the medics are getting shot first when they shouldn't be shot at all. And it's funny how the GIs realizing that said, you know what? I don't want this title anymore. I don't want this Red Cross highlighting me. I'd rather just serve. I'm just going to heal people without the title and all the, the glamour, because the enemy doesn't look at me special anyway, so I'm just
Right.
going to do it. And in a sense, as Christians, we're that, the enemy's just going to kind of do its thing. We don't need the title.
Right.
We can just go in and serve our brothers just wherever they need it without having to worry about the big red cross singling us out or anything.
That's right. Yeah. Without the attention. Mm-hmm. That's nice. Sandy?
I was going to say, it's important when we are trying to minister that we follow Jesus' example, and he took time to rest and talk to his Father. And sometimes we as humans like to, oh, I have to do this, and we feel like it's all on my shoulders that I have to minister to people, but we don't take the time to get what we need or to spend time with God to be refilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a huge part of being not only a minister but a disciple, is just that recognition that that I'm not the boss, right? I'm not the only, it's not my sacrifice that saves someone's sins, right? and recognizing there is a need that someone has that I can never meet. I can never meet that need. And it's so often, and I say it affects kids and spouses. I would say it probably affects kids and spouses more often, because there is so often you look at someone in your family and you go, how do I make sure they never get hurt, never get right, and go to heaven, right? There's so many of these things that, like, I want to send my family to heaven. That's not your job. I want to make sure my kids never get hurt. That's not your job. I want to make sure they always feel safe. That's not your job. Right? So often when we are doing that, when we are expending so much of ourselves that we feel like there's nothing left, there are two things that we have to do. We have to realize that we need someone to minister to us. Right? We need someone to give us that time. We need to turn around and say, honey, I'm going to take a bath, and I need to not be disturbed by anyone under 4 foot tall. Absolutely. Anytime, Bill. Right? We need to be able to say that and not feel guilty about it. But we also need to realize there are needs that we don't have to meet. I don't have to keep Oliver from scraping his knee. I have to be there to kiss it. But I don't have to keep it from happening. Because if I try to do that, that's it. I'm done. I can't do it. I can't follow him. I don't have that kind of energy anymore. Who does? Right? So when we start, and again, and that's why I think there is something, that's why I think this part is so incredibly important. Because if you are focused on someone's needs, and it's not about what you want for them, it's about what they actually need, then you can't overdo it. Right? You can't overdo it. And often you might look at someone's needs and go, I'll tell you what they need not me. You know? This is, like, that's when you're training for first aid. You get in there and you're doing what you can, and then someone who is more qualified than you comes along, and you're trained to step back, to get out of their way, to recognize that and say, oh, great, I'm out. Right? Or, if you're like, you know what, I'm going to continue compressions, you do what you got to do. Right? I'm just going to continue doing this. I'm going to set myself at this job, and then if you need me to do something else, fine. If you need me to get out of here, fine. Right? I defer. Right? So when we find ourselves overwhelmed, when we find ourselves worn out, it's one of those two things. Either we are sacrificing too much for something that they don't need, or a need we can't possibly meet, or we need to examine who needs to be ministered to, because it might be us. The other thing that I do want to kind of call attention to is this idea of lavish. I love what Nelson says when he calls for food. When Nelson gets up and makes an announcement, one of the things he always says is, if you would want it in your pantry, then that's what you should give. Because it's not about like, okay, I've trained you up, you'll make a C on this course, right? It's not about like, okay, I've tutored you just enough. Okay, I've taken care of you just enough. It's not about, okay, I took care of you, I'm going to leave you on the side of the road. It's, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to throw you on my donkey, I'm going to take you to the inn, I'm going to pay the innkeeper to take care of you, and I'm going to let them know if they need anything else to get me on the way back. Right? That's the kind of ministering that is described in the Bible. It is seeing a need and fully meeting that need. It's not meeting every need, but it is taking that need and fully meeting it until it needs to not be met by anyone else ever again. So this idea of lavish, this idea of kind of almost presenting as opposed to just handing over, right? This idea of rewarding almost someone with care is how we treat other humans as Christians. This idea of exalting them with our giving is so societally backwards that when you see someone doing it, immediately they stand out and you go, ah, I know you, I see you, right? Like the example Vivian gave that first week. You see someone and they're exuding, they're radiating something. Yeah.
And I'm thinking it's not just ministry for the sake of ministry.
No.
It's ministry with compassion. As the Lord said, I have compassion for these people.
Right.
You give them something to eat. See, it goes hand in hand with spiritual virtues, not just doing it because I have to do it,
Right.
but doing it because there's a need, and love has to be involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get practical, because we've heard some ways that people do this in everyday life, right? We've heard these ways that, like, okay, if I get a full day off, I want to make sure that there's an act of service in this day, right? If I want to make sure that in whatever I do, love is involved. So let's get practical. I'm going to give 3 things that I thought of that that pop up all the time, and they're not mine. I stole a lot of these, but the first one I'm going to do is something that I've heard Tony say at the announcements. When the bulletin comes up and you're reading the bulletin, say yes to one of the gatherings. Give up some time and go to one of these things. Go to the coffee clutch. Go to the Barnes night. Go to Cathedral Kitchen. Say yes to something. If you're not there, you can't minister. I mean, you can't minister in that field, right? You can't see the needs that are there if you're not there to see them, right? So one of the things that I would suggest is say yes to something in the announcements. And when you say yes, put it in your phone. I can't think of how many times I've said, yeah, I'm going to go to Barnes this month. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning, I go, "Gah!" Right? So when you're listening to the announcements, instead of going, here are announcements again, think to yourself, what can I do this week? How can I put myself in a place where a need can be met? Because so often at Barnes, people ask to be prayed for. People come with testimony. People come with stories. Right? We hear about it. It's cool. We wish we'd have been there. We can be. Yeah? So find something in the announcements to say yes to. Or look at your life and look at something you have that can benefit someone else and add it to your prayer list. Add that item to your prayer list I've got a car I barely drive anymore. God, how can I serve with this car? I've got a, I was talking to Bill about this. We've got a brand new house. I'm fixing up the downstairs. Once it's fixed up, I want God to use it. I don't know how. But add it to my prayer list. How can God use this space in my house? Identify an asset you have and pray for God to use it. Probably won't present itself right away, but it might present itself right away. And when it does present itself, if you're praying about it, you won't miss it. Third thing, and this is, I think, an Elizabeth thing. If you ever feel that pang when someone walks by your car with a sign and go, I don't have any change, I don't have anything to... Buy your favorite snack bar. Throw it in the car. Because then when the need presents itself, you won't feel that pang anymore. You won't sit there and go, oh, I don't have anything to give. You do. And not the cheapest snack bar. Buy your favorite snack bar. I think it was Elizabeth, but it was like, I was going to eat that, but, and that's my favorite, I think it was a Kind bar. She was like, that's my favorite Kind bar, not the dark chocolate and cherry, right? But, it was one of those that, and I was like, what a great story, because it was, I have my favorite snack bars, I keep them in the car, right? Not in the summer months, but I have my favorite snack bars, they're in the car, I drive up, I see someone, and I don't feel that sense of loss at missing that opportunity. I go, oh, yeah, I got you. It's not much, but I got you. So that's my third one is have what you need ready. If giving to the homeless isn't your thing, go buy a Bible and mark the passages that you like to spread. Mark the passages that someone needs to see. I think it was Tony that said, whenever I minister to someone, whenever I start a Bible study with someone, I buy them a Bible and I bookmark the pages. So go buy the Bible, bookmark the pages, have it ready. Then when someone says, I want to do a Bible study, there's no prep time involved. You've got it. Yeah. How does an hour sound? Right? Have what you need ready and at your fingertips to minister. So those are my three things, is listen for a chance to be part of a ministry, or identify an asset you have and pray that God can use it, or identify something you can easily acquire and go get that asset so that you have it. I love, and I'm adding it to my notes, it is a lifestyle. Ministry is a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle of not necessarily giving everything of yourself to another human being, but it is a lifestyle of giving everything you have to God and letting Him attune you to those needs around you that you have every capacity to meet. And then stepping forward and meeting those needs. Anything else before we close in prayer? All right, let's say a quick prayer. I would take prayer requests, but think of your prayer requests. I'm going to pray over it because we're running over. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for what you give us. Thank you for how you bless us as stewards. And God, we pray that we would be able to share that blessing. We pray that we would be able to attune ourselves to the needs around us. We pray that we would be able to see a need and be bold enough to step forward and to take on the gravitas of an official capacity and meet that need. God, we ask that you would continue to lay those needs before us, that you would continue to share those with us and trust us with those. And we ask that we in turn would be faithful vessels of your blessings. God, there are so many needs present in this room. There are so many people who are interceding for someone else, people who have a need themselves. There are so many ways that we can bless each other right at our fingertips. We ask that you would show those to us, and God, we ask that your hand would be in all of those interactions, in all of those moments, in all of those, in every second of ministry. God, we ask that you would take control and drive. It's through your Son's name we pray. Amen.